a very warm good evening to our viewers. Welcome to Evening Review. I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Well, the Higher Education, Training and Innovation Ministry has been making headlines the past few days. Of course, revelations and allegations surrounding corruption and mismanagement of funds hogging media headlines during the past few days. Of course, there has also been outcry over what has been revealed as the ministry dipping into the kitty of SOEs resorting under that ministry to fund for the travels of the minister and some of the management members in that ministry. There has been different views around this matter, and to dissect this, we have in studio tonight the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress of Namibia, Mr. Mahongora Kavihuha. Welcome, sir. It's always good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no, it's good. Well, what do you make of this development?
Yeah, thank you very much to invite me to your studio. And again, the developments are coming while the weather is not so pleasant. We are suffering from cold and those kind of things. However, of course, I think that for us who have been advocating against corruption, we are not surprised to see those kind of revelations. However, what worries us, what is next? Because we have been saying that corruption in Namibia is an institutionalized practice, where if you have seen you are corrupt, you have been covered, and many instruments have been planted in order to distort the attentions of the public towards the act that you have committed. You could see from many years, media, some are calling that is witch hunt, some are calling whatsoever. But those are just the planted elements that you always know. You find it in the system, especially when you are fighting an evil act that they have been, institutionalized or systematized.
Yeah.
So that is what we have been experiencing now. However, also, when the information came to public, we were thinking that maybe like a spokesperson of the Ministry of Higher Education, he will come to help the situation. But of course, he just added paraffin to the fire, because I was expecting when he is admitting that yes, the money was advanced to the minister, clause what of State Finance Act or paragraph what of the Treasury regulations was used, or paragraph what of the UNAM or NAST or whatever institutions financial policy was used, but he never came to that.
But they said they did mention that the money was repaid.
No, the issue here is that it's not about repaying the money. It's about implementing the illegal instrument that in place. Was it an act of good governance for you to access that money in the first instance, as per the regulations, the policies, and the law, especially for state finance, even for the Ministry of Higher Education to repay that money, which law they have used? As far as we are concerned, especially myself, who have been too involved in public sector, I know that there is no clause that support that kind of money exchange between institutions, both in the State Finance Act and the Treasury regulation. There is nothing like that. So it's not about whether you repay the money. The question is that were you within the confinement of the laws for you to access in the first instance, before we go to the to the second chapter of repaying or not repaying.
We have dealt with that now. But in the statement, the press statement released by the ministry yesterday, there's been an explanation in one of the paragraphs where the ministry says that some of these trips actually benefits some of these SOEs that contributed monetary-wise to these trips.
The issue here, I'm still repeating what I said earlier, is that it's not about accidentally whether the act is going to benefit A or B. Before any expenditures is incurred, there should be procedures to be followed. That is one of the most important aspects. For you to access the funds from a state fund, from any state institutions, that state institution is supposed to have its policies in place, how to access that funds. For the money to be transferred from physical, which is now the Ministry of Higher Education, as appropriated by Parliament of the Republic of Namibia, the State Finance Act and the Treasury regulations come to play. And nothing in those two legal documents support those kind of internal borrowing, we can call that or whatsoever. I don't know how can you call it. So there's nothing like that. So the bottom line is that those that authorize those expenditures, they must account to the Auditor General and to the public that what instrument they have used. And if they went beyond what the policy requires and the laws requires, they must be held accountable. So that is the most important thing. If we are serious about the state resources that we are serious about upholding ethics of good governance and accountability.
Well, your union, the daily work of the union which you represent, of course, centers primarily around education. There has been a crisis over the years that education funding has not been at sufficient levels. We've also seen over the years institutions such as the Research Commission and even the universities, whether it's Namibia University of Science and Technology and the University of Namibia, decrying the lack of funding, especially for research purposes. What does this situation of the minister, when compared to those cries over the years, what picture does it send out?
To me, I think that the behavior of the minister in these instances, it is completely violations of Article 18 of the Namibia Constitution.
But why is it that we're only blaming the minister here?
That is the bottom line. The minister you are blaming in the sense that by virtue of her position, there will be an element of misuse of power and intimidations. And the favors created because of the hierarchies of power by the subordinates, which are now the respective institutions and those that are working within those institutions. So the issue here is about the political power that you have and what kind of fear you have inculcated among these people. For you, when you receive just a letter, you end up just signing. So the most important things as a head of any setup, you first question you ask that, yes, I want to go, but is me to go and borrow this money or get this money or be funded by this person ethical or not ethical? You'd ask that question if you're ethical leader, and that should inform you. Now, coming to the issues, that's why we are saying is that for now, we were expecting the respective institution for them to respond and not to respond with political statement, because I don't think that they are politicians. They're supposed to be technocrats. When they are responding is when they are quoting as specific clauses from various legal instruments that mandate them how to manage those finances and mandate them that, okay, we have acted in terms of these provisions when we advance this specific amount to this individual, irrespective of his or her position. I also ask you the same questions that had the minister, if a person was not a minister, should those institutions behave the same way? I don't think that the answer would be the same. So I think that there was the issues of misuse of power in that regard. So that is very important, even for UNESCO to go and just write a letter to the bank on behalf of the minister. That is completely unethical. So all those kind of arrangement, one could see that there was a misuse of power, which is contradict the Article 18 of the Namibian Constitution. So we need to go to deeper, and we dig it out, whether the money is repaid and how it was repaid and what are the terms, even that was agreed before the money was advanced in terms of repayment. Are they repaid with interest or not interest? Because if an ordinary public servant owe the state, you hear it. Even if you owe NAMRA, you hear there is interest, there is what, and you are forced even to pay the money that you cannot afford in a specific period of time. But is that also applicable in these instances or not?
Yeah. Just lastly, before we go for a break, this situation is there on the table now. Whether it's facts or just mere allegations. What do you think is the way forward now?
No, I think that the issues of facts is not in dispute. Everybody confirmed the money was borrowed. Borrowed, accessed, given, that is different things. But the fact remains that the money was advanced for traveling purposes. Those are facts. Now the questions whether that kind of arrangement in principle is the healthy arrangement or not healthy arrangement. Is it in terms of the regulation or not in terms of the regulations? So the most important aspect is for the head of state to come out clear and talk to the nations in terms of us understanding whether that is in under the Harabe pillar that dealing with a good good governance. And if that is, because I'm sure that I don't know whether it's true or not true. I think that I read in one of the newspaper where Shimi said that there is no such a rule, and I concur. If he said so, I concur with him. I can even myself confirm that when you go to State Finance Act or Treasury regulations, there is no such arrangement. Because even within the same institutions, if you have to move the money from from one element where it was appropriated for to another one, there are procedures to be followed. So in these instances, I don't think that that is happening, because I know even some of the workshops that were called off because the money for SNTs is depleted in various ministries that we are also serving in many boards.
Well, we head for a quick break and we'll continue this conversation. Well, to our viewers, we head for a quick break and we'll then continue with this very interesting and insightful conversation. Stay tuned. Welcome back from the short break. Mr. Kavihuha, one of the issues that has always also been plaguing the higher education or the tertiary sector and the SOEs that deal with, that reports to the higher education ministry is the issue of the absence of substantial boards of SOEs resorting under that ministry. You've also in the past spoken about the impact, the adverse impact such arrangement has on the operations of such institutions. What is your current view? Has it changed opposed to your past views?
What made me worried and also unfortunate is I will direct it to the Prime Minister. When he always says that they have signed a performance agreements and all those kind of things. I don't know what is entails in those performance agreements. Maybe they define performance as being a failure agreement, because I don't think that on serious note, the minister can confidently say that I had a good time during my tenure as a Minister of Higher Education.
But what do you base that rating on?
That's why I'm saying that they have questioning the rating, because the most important aspect now, you look at NTA. NTA, on a serious note, is at the verge of collapsing. You saw that the workers and the business, they have been omitted from the board. And the business or the employers are the one that are contributing to the levy and all those kind of things. And unshamingly, when the Ministry of Labor raised the issues with her, she even quoted the clause in the NTA Act that requires that there should be two representatives from the employer, two representatives from the workers. But she indicated that although I have quoted that one, I'm not going to submit one to the cabinet. And I don't know how the cabinet, whether it was submitted or not submitted, and even if it was submitted, you also wonder what kind of zombies that are in cabinet, to the extent that they have to agree to someone who vividly say I will break the law. Yeah, so those are the very painful thing, because even the moral among the employers now towards NTA, it has dropped completely. The moral by the workers towards NTA has dropped. The moral of the providers have also dropped, because what is happening there is uncalled for. You saw today, we learned that there is a interim board appointed of NAST. That tells you already that there is a problem, because over the years we are experiencing it now under her leadership that they are always temporary board, and this board term of office does not end unexpectedly. Of course, you know already that this board is for 3 years or for 5 years, and it will end, and you already 6 months or 3 months in advance you are already putting instrument in place. So I'm sure that you see already that there is no stable institution that is falling under the Ministry of Higher Education that you can pin on, say that no, this one is stable, they have legitimate leaderships, and leadership are both, whether the substantive CEO or the board in their time. So that to us is a concern, especially with regard to the research. Because with challenges now, climate challenges now, Namibia, we need to carry out various research with the issues of hydrogen, green hydrogen, those kind of things. We need to produce various research documents. But without clear-cut leadership, one wonder where are we heading as a country. So to us, as an educationists, we are very concerned with that. And that can also tell you that if you are not performing here, you should have been preoccupied with something. And I'm sure that what is revealing now is maybe that was preoccupying the ministers, that she is not on her task.
Mr. Kavihuha, you know the challenges in the education sector, be it financial shortcomings, the human resource shortcomings. Would it be fair for you to sit here today and apportion so much blame to the minister because of this scenario, and ignoring all the other elements that are not in place to ensure that the sector actually functions? Is this you merely just being a unionist and bashing government?
I mean, on record saying that the problems that we face in the education sector are human-made. Human-made, that's all. It's the lack of planning, it's the lack of accountability, and lack of ensuring that you have the right people in the right positions. That's all. The moment we just address those three elements, there will not be a problem in education. We will be a responsive country, not a reactionary country as we are today. You saw already with the issues of the what is happening in the high institutions. All the curriculums have adjusted in order to respond to this new curriculum of the schools. And the workload of those lecturers at various high institutions are not looked at. The funds are not availed. New breaching courses have been introduced every center, but all the workloads are going to the lecturers. So we are assuming in all these kind of things, and we are ensuring that even the high education need to be organized so that they are not becoming a dumping dumping site, but at least they become active participants in terms of determining their workload, in terms of determining the qualities and all those kind of things. Because now we are moving to quantity, not quality anymore. And this is what will happen in a basic education, but you are now gradually seeing clearly in the higher education as well. And also the government policies in trying to change the higher education to start operating in a business mode, moving away from the social aspects to business arrangement. That's why we are seeing now there is a human capital, people, all those kind of things. And that is compromising the real aspects, that because higher institutions, social institutions, their mandate is to provide knowledge to the citizens, paid by the states or paid by the citizen themselves through physical. There is no way now that they are now rediverting attentions to start giving more attention on how to generate income. That will compromise the purpose of the public higher institutions.
Yeah.
And that's why as the union, we have been even standing on their way, saying that no, guys, stop. Well, your approach now is getting out of hand. And we are still standing on our grounds.
But what is your ideal approach, considering where the country is moving towards, where the economy is moving towards? Surely we can't continue doing things the way we did it in the past.
The issue here is the leadership, and I have no control over leadership. The electorates have a control over leadership. And the one who was given to drive have control over leadership. If you appoint a competent minister, and that minister inculcates that competency within his ministry, of course, things will change.
You spoke at length about what you perceive as a lack or rather poor leadership in the sector. As a union, is there ever a time where you converge as stakeholders and discuss some of these things? Has your union perhaps ever tried reaching out to the ministry to say, can we have a sit down with you? We have these proposals that we think can make your work easier.
No, it has been our approach, reaching out to everyone, because we have been preaching the culture of social dialogue. We need to talk to each other so that we can share the success together, we can share the failures together. So, but unfortunately, the culture of social dialogue, it needs to be promoted from one angle, and the other party should be willing to engage.
What was the minister's response?
So what we've been saying, that in education there have been various meetings, there have been various conferences, there have been various resolutions. But based on those resolutions, if there is no political will, then the physical will not be able to fund those recommendations. And if those recommendations are not funded, then they will start accumulating dust. So what we are saying is that not only in education, there was even the land conference. Where are we with their recommendations? So there were many national conventions where we met, put heads together, coming with the resolutions, but when they go back, they must be funded by the country's resources. The one who entrusted to advance those resources towards those recommendations is unable to do so. What do you expect? So what we are saying is that as much as we are citizens, we are vocal, we are raising the issues, we are ringing the bell, but so for someone at least to hear who have ears, those that don't have ears, they will remain closing their ears, but one day maybe one will see.
But can you honestly sit here and say that there's someone or there's a government that wouldn't want to implement sound policies and fund those policies to improve the education sector?
The issue here is very simple. There are various approaches towards economy for the economy to mean something to the citizen. As a government, you have to ensure that your macroeconomic policies streamline employment. And by streamlining employment, you are eroding the interest in the education sector for these people to be absorbed. But that is not happening. We've been saying that for you to ensure that everyone goes with energy to classroom, you must be, that person must be able at least to buy an apple on the way to school. How do you do that? By giving what we call universal basic income grant, so that each person can at least buy a banana, a child, just to get that energy. Can you see? These things are not happening. A person at least not to walk a longer distance can take a taxi even at a reduced rate through the basic income grant. So there are many interventions that the government don't want to implement which will bring relief to all the socio-economic problems that we have. And these things have been worked out. People have spent resources, and even to prove to government that it's visible if you do A, B, C, D.
But
And
is
today,
government really that irresponsible to say we don't want to improve the education sector?
I will not put words in your mouth, but what I'm saying is that they are not pro poor in terms of their planning, in terms of their budgeting, and in terms of their behavior.
Yeah.
And that's why 33 years after independence, we are the second highest unequal society in the world, irrespective of all what we are doing well. We are the country that close to half a population living in the shacks. There is no clear indication that you can say, I don't know whether you are born free or not, but where you can say that after independence, this and this and this are functioning well. What can you pin out? The only thing that you can pin out now that you can say that this one is still perfect is our roads.
Yeah.
Our roads are perfect. We don't know about it. But all the other things, you see how struggling we are.
Yeah.
And people don't eat roads, and only few that are using roads that are fortunate to own cars.
Yeah.
And the majority where we are. And you see the high fatalities on the road accidents, all those kind of things. So these are clear indications that the socio-economic problem or challenges are not addressed, and we don't have a responsive policies to address those kind of things. You saw already in terms of the green hydrogen, the contradictions. The feasibility study is still being carried out, but someone tells you that you're going to create so many jobs when you study what and you get the figure from what. And we should buy in for that kind of things.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Kavihuha, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure having you on there.
For us, we are not tired, we will continue. And no one will come and tell us, no, we don't provide solutions. We have, as an organization, policies on how to be addressed and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So when we are talking about basic income grant, we are talking about the issues of pro-employment policies. We are talking about the issues of universal or pension funds, national pension fund, all those kind of things. These are interventions, poor interventions that can narrow the gap between rich and the poor.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, to our viewers, that's it from the evening review team this evening. Thank you for staying tuned and have a pleasant evening.